Hello, and welcome to another edition of On the Hill Media. Today, my guest is Mark Grannis, the Maryland District Congressional District number 8. How are you doing today?
I'm doing just great.
Great. Can you first tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born in Ohio. I came to this area in 1981 to go to Georgetown University. And then after going to law school and practicing elsewhere for a little while, I returned to this area permanently in 1991. And I've been living there with my wife ever since, and now I've got 2 great kids there. I'm a lawyer. I have done a lot of different kinds of law, but now since 1998, I've been in a firm that concentrates on telecommunications and litigation. That's a firm that I started with a couple of other partners. I now serve as the managing partner, and therefore know what it's like to run a small business.
So what is it that you want to bring down to your district and to the Congress?
I'd like to bring a dose of reality. We are way past broke, and yet Congress will not stop spending, and they're doing it by borrowing a lot of it and then using the printing press for the rest. And the borrowing robs our children of future dollars that they haven't even earned yet, and we're spending for stuff that we happen to want. And the printing press robs our seniors of the value of all that they've saved over their lifetimes, and also of the interest that they were hoping to earn. A lot of people, who thought they were going to be able to find nice, safe investments for their money in their retirement, can't earn the income that they were planning on earning because of the Federal Reserve policy of devaluing our money and just printing more.
Okay, so we know for the House of Representatives you have 2 years. In those 2 years, if elected, what do you want to have accomplished in that time frame?
Well, there's a lot to do. I would say that the top priorities for me would be stopping the out-of-control spending. We have to do that, and I think that's something that actually threatens our future survival. That threatens there's a real possibility now of financial collapse of the U.S. government, which I just never thought I'd live to see. So that's the first thing that we have to do. I think we also have to do something about the job situation, and the only way to solve that is to liberate our economy from the federal micromanagement that's become such a heavy burden on the machinery of business. We need to restore our civil liberties, restore a lot of what's happened over the last 10 years, and stand up for civil liberties that maybe are endangered. There have been some successes lately in the civil liberties area, but I think I'm very concerned about the increased move to regulate campaign speech, and that's something that I think we ought to talk about a lot in the course of this election. Congress has less control over how the president conducts foreign policy, but I do think it's important for the nation to reorient our foreign policy toward defense and try and get away from a lot of the foreign nation building that we've been doing. And finally, I think it's critical that we do something to dismantle the incumbency protection machine that Congress has set up for itself, and that's a bipartisan problem. The Republicans and Democrats have made it real easy for the incumbents to stay elected. So much so that this year, when there's a record disapproval of Congress, I'm going to guess that we have between 350 and 380 members of the House come back. Well, if we didn't have all the gerrymandering and there weren't the huge disparities in election contributions, we'd have more like 10 come back. We'd have 400 freshmen in the House next year, and that's not going to happen because of the gerrymandering and other tricks that the incumbents have used to keep themselves in office. So that's a tall order, and it's not realistic to think that all that can happen in 2 years. But those are all of the really important fronts that I think we need to fight all at once.
All right, let's talk about the economy for a second here.
Okay.
Now, we know billions of dollars have been approved through Congress for spending. What is your ideas of upholding accountability?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is accountability is not really the missing ingredient here. The missing ingredient was good judgment in deciding on the spending. You talk about accountability, it almost makes it sound like the spending was a good idea, and what we really need to do now is make sure it all works the way it was intended. In my opinion, the spending was an incredibly lousy idea. It was a terrible idea, and there's no way that it can be redeemed from its lousiness. So I guess I feel like if you look at the spending we've done, it's just not very smart. I mean, if you voted for bank bailouts and auto bailouts and cash for clunkers, I mean, I can't sugarcoat this. You're too dumb to be in charge of our money if you voted for that stuff. And the only kind of accountability that I'm interested in for people that voted for that is to get them out of office as soon as possible.
Now, of course, part of the spending was to help our economy on the unemployment rate. Now, we know our unemployment rate has been as high as it's been in years. What is your idea to recede those numbers?
I think that the answer to that is not going to be a government answer. It's going to be our answer. We, the people who are out there working in our jobs and working in our small businesses, producing things that our neighbors want and are willing voluntarily to pay us for, that's the key. And we're going to have to adapt to the new realities of this post-bubble economy and unleash our productive capacity doing things that people actually want done. Now here's the bad news. Unfortunately, for that to happen, a lot of us are going to have to find our next job in a new line of work. But that's what the government is not allowing happening right now by denying the fundamental change that's occurred. The news flash here is that thing that burst back in 2008, that was a bubble. And the economy we had until then is never coming back.
Right.
So we got to get on with our business here, and people just have to hunker down and use the same ingenuity that we've always used to survive and to feed ourselves and to be productive, to satisfy human need.
Now, let's talk about the small business for a second. Now, of course, we know in this past week that Congress has already passed a small business initiative that was spearheaded by our president. What are your ideas on our small businesses here, and what should we do for them?
I think the best thing we can do for small business is leave it alone. I mean, look, it's important. There are some small startup businesses, and you think about the Silicon Valley people, and they're all, trying to work on great technological innovation. A lot of small businesses are just doing very ordinary things. These are people who have something to offer. They have something they like doing, which is valuable to their neighbors, and they want to exchange with their neighbors and have their neighbors, buy stuff from them. It's really very simple. It doesn't require a government program. It doesn't require any subsidies. It's been going on for thousands of years without the government's help. What those people, all they really need from the government is for the government to get out of the way and stop throwing up roadblocks.
Now, I have some other questions about your website and also about your statute on your campaign. Now, in your website, you mentioned about trusting the states.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is that we've been in a bad habit for a long time, and by we, I mean the voters now. This is our fault. This is on us. We've been in a bad habit of nationalizing every problem. And in our votes for Congress and for other national offices, we tend to give our vote to the guy who's got the quickest imagination and can rattle off the biggest number of government programs to solve every problem that we think we have.
Right.
Now, there's a couple of problems with that. One of them is a lot of the stuff that we've ended up throwing into the federal government's basket is not actually constitutionally delegated to the federal government. It's not a power we've given them. So, for example, the war on drugs. Where in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution does it say that Congress is allowed to regulate what we put into our bodies?
Right.
I think that there may be some reason for some states to try and continue a war on drugs. I don't personally favor it, but if Utah wants to do that, I live in Maryland, and that's fine with me. I'd just like to start with the proposition that it's at least not a federal issue. Apart from the constitutionality, there's a great advantage to pushing as many things as possible, as close to the people as possible. And so if there are going to be different approaches in the country to job training or things like that are clearly within the state government's power, then I think we can all benefit from the diversity that comes about and from the experimentation that comes about when the states try and do these things on their own.
Now, I'm going to change gears here and talk about the immigration. As we saw during this last couple months, we had Arizona pass the immigration law. Now, what's your ideas about immigration, and what are your thoughts on fixing our immigration problem here?
Immigration, I think, is an issue that has been treated a lot more intensely in the political discussion than it needs to be. The fundamental issue, it seems to me, the thing that we should all agree on, is that people who want to live and work or invest among us and contribute to making this country great should all be welcome. We can't have too many of those people. And therefore, I'm for a very, very permissive approach to legal immigration. I think we should make it very, very easy for people to come to the country legally. Now, I think where you get into trouble is if you have a welfare state, and if you have a broken tax system that lets some people get off without paying their fair share, then that's when people start to have problems and people start to get upset about it. They feel, the legal residents here feel cheated. They feel like the size of the economic pie is fixed and it's just being cut into smaller and smaller pieces. That's where, as a libertarian, I want to stand up and say, wait, the size of the pie is not fixed. The pie gets bigger every time that we add people who have productive capacity to our economy. So if we have these people who want to come in, we should let them. Now, as long as living standards are much higher this side of the border than they are south of the border, the number of people who want to come to this country to build a better life for themselves, for their families, is going to be huge. And if you don't let those people in through the front door, they're going to sneak around back. And I think that's the problem that we've gotten into with our immigration policy. It's wrong-headed to try and keep so many people out. It won't work any more than you can, dam up too much water. It's a natural force of people trying to build better lives. And personally, I don't think that you can ever have too many people who want to come to America to build better lives for themselves. That's not the problem. What other problems we have, that's not a problem.